is we're gonna enter the Prague Castle. What we're gonna do is that we're gonna pass through the gate. We can of course make the pictures of the castle guards. The castle, as you can see, is not a medieval castle like tomorrow Karlstein, but it's a huge complex of more than 400 different buildings. 3 courtyards, fortification with preserved gates and towers, cathedral, other churches and chapels, gardens, houses, palaces. This everything belongs to the castle. This is the center of Prague at the beginning of the 17th century. It was carved before the year 1630. I was talking about 4 historical towns. So please, this is where we are now. You can see the castle there. So the castle town. If you look at the castle, you can see the fortification. And then the cathedral in the very right. But it looks different. It only has 1 tower. Because that was still the time, it was a half of it already. Yeah, and the 2 towers we can see now didn't exist at the time yet. Then you can see fortification on the other side. And then below the castle, so here in this corner, this is the lesser or the little town of Prague, where we are going next when we leave the castle. So the area below the castle. Founded 1257 on place of older settlement. Yeah, actually people have been living here since the beginning of the 10th century. And then this is the famous Charles Bridge. If you've seen the bridge on your own or the pictures, there's one difference. Can you see what's the main difference between the Charles Bridge now and there? And it is? Something is missing here. What makes the bridge so special? The statues. Yeah. Because at the time the statues, again, didn't stand there yet. The bridge was Gothic, 14th century, Peter Parlin. But the statues are mainly end of 17th, beginning of 18th century. So again, at that time, they didn't exist yet. Now you can see the Old Town Bridge Tower here, which we'll see also together. And then the Old Town, this is the Old Town. The Jewish town, these are the little houses here in front, because it was the poorest part, the little houses. And then there's a church on the very left with two towers there, same towers, and that's Dean's Church and Old Town Square. Yeah, that's where we're gonna see Old Town Astronomical Clock. Now behind it there's quite a large part, and that's the New Town. For your orientation, your hotel would be somewhere there behind the fields. Well, as her confession priest, of course, she told me her confession secrets. Yeah, which would be okay if her husband, the king, wasn't jealous. He was jealous, and he wanted this man to tell, well, him what she told him, of course, because he wanted to know. But Catholic priests are not allowed to tell confession secrets. So the man never told anything, and it was pitiful. Because the king decided to execute him for this. First he was imprisoned, then he was tortured, and then they executed him. They throw him out of the Charles Bridge. So we're gonna see later on at the bridge a statue of this man falling down. And nowadays the people touch the statue for better luck than he had, probably. And the story goes that he fell in water, and as he fell, 5 golden stars appeared above water. Yeah. So nowadays there is a statue with 5 golden stars, and he became patron saint of bridges. You find him very often on bridges in Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic. So don't forget to touch his statue. Jan Nepomuk or Nepomuceni. He's quite famous in South America for some reason. And then this man was buried here. Of course, he became saint after centuries. And he is buried because of us. Gothic castles were located. This hall is called Vladislav Hall, named after its founder, the King Vladislav II. It was built according to plans of an outstanding late Gothic architect, Benedict Reed. It took 10 years to build it, between the years 1492 and 1502. And it is a very interesting combination of two styles, Gothic and Renaissance. You can see Gothic vaulting here, or late Gothic vaulting, because you can see that the ribs here do not carry the vaulting anymore. They are here just for decoration. And the windows here, they already are Renaissance. One of them is said to be the oldest example of Renaissance art north of Alps, 1493. These houses here were used by castle guards and by craftsmen, so by the poorest inhabitants of the castle. And they are part of fortification. So if you go there, there is like a little corridor, yeah, which takes you up to the floors and you see the fortification through the windows. In the past, the houses were on both sides of the lane. There was a meter of space between them.
Катюк.
Сейчас.
Я говорю, ты там встань.
Я вот вообще никуда не хожу.
Надо лёжа.
Ева. Добре. Зайди, пожалуйста.
Square we are now on is named after Czech student Jan Palach. Maybe you still remember his name. He was the young man who burned himself to death on January 1969 to protest against the Soviet invasion into Czechoslovakia, which ended the so-called Prague Spring. Yeah, the time when the party in this country wanted to create the so-called socialism with a human face, which of course Moscow didn't like. Well, this Palach was 23 years old. He was a student of philosophical faculty in this building. And if you look to the left part, you can see his face there, the memorial of him. You see the little head there? Yeah. He had a face which was taken after child.
Ya se abre, vamos a verlo. Mira.
Ja, andere staat. Ja, ik merk aan wat voor pannen. Wat dan zo?
Nee, die komen again. Die komen daar aan het einde. Maar dat is nooit vlak daar. Doe daar niet meer.
Ja, dat gooi je hoor. Dat gooi je hoor.
Mannen meer.
Dat is